You wake up tomorrow morning. The sun is peeking through your curtains. Your alarm is buzzing. Everything feels perfectly normal. You stretch, you yawn, you swing your legs off the bed. And then, without a single warning, the most fundamental law of reality breaks. Gravity flips. Everything you have ever known about up and down ceases to exist in a single heartbeat. The floor is no longer your friend. The ceiling is no longer above you. The sky is no longer up. It is down, and you are falling toward it. Not falling down, falling up. This is not a thought experiment. This is not a movie. This is the question that changes everything. What if gravity suddenly reversed for 24 hours? Not a gradual shift, not a gentle tug, a violent, instant, catastrophic inversion. Every loose object on the planet, every person not strapped to something immovable, every drop of water in every ocean and lake and river, every car parked on every street, every brick that was never bolted down, every animal standing in a field, every bird that happened to be on the ground, every single thing that exists on the surface of the earth is suddenly hurled skyward at an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared, upward, into the open sky, into the void. You have exactly 1 second to react before you are airborne. You have less than a second to understand that the world has ended and a new one has begun. And you have 24 hours before it all snaps back, before everything that went up comes crashing down. This is the story of those 24 hours, the most terrifying day in human history. And it starts right now, in your bedroom, as your feet leave the floor and your stomach drops the way it does on a roller coaster, except there is no track beneath you, no harness around your shoulders, no safety bar clicking into place. There is only sky, and it is coming for you. The first second is the one that kills the most people, not because of the fall, because of the shock, because nobody believes what is happening. Your brain is not built for this. Nothing in your evolutionary history prepared you for the ground rejecting you. Your instincts say fall means down, and down means danger. But now fall means up, and up means a sky that has no floor. So in that first second, most people do not grab anything. Most people freeze. They blink. They look around in confusion. And by the time they understand, they're already 2 meters above the floor, already drifting, already rising. You are different. Maybe it is instinct. Maybe it is luck. Maybe your hand was already on the bedpost when it happened. But something makes you lunge, not upward. You lunge sideways, toward the heaviest thing in the room. A thick metal pipe running along the wall, a radiator bolted to the masonry, a structural column, anything that is attached to the building itself, anything that the building is attached to the ground through. Because here is the terrifying physics of it. When gravity reverses, the ground does not repel you. The ground is still there. The building is still there. But the force that held you to the ground now pushes you away from it. And the force that held the building to the ground now pushes the building away from the ground too. But the building is heavy. Building is anchored. The building has foundations sunk deep into bedrock. So for a few critical seconds, the building does not move. You do. Your body is light enough that 9.8 meters per second squared is enough to tear you off the floor instantly. But the building, with its thousands of tons of concrete and steel, resists. For now. So you grab the pipe. Your fingers wrap around cold metal and your knuckles go white and every muscle in your arms and back fires at once. You are hanging, not from a cliff, from your own ceiling. Your feet are dangling above your head. Your hair is falling upward. Your shirt is billowing toward the sky. And below you, or rather above you, or rather in the direction your brain still calls up, you can see your phone drifting lazily through the air, tumbling end over end, climbing toward the window. You watch it go. You will never see it again. In this first second, across the planet, 8 billion people are experiencing the same impossible moment. Some are in the shower, some are in their cars, some are walking their dogs, some are in surgery, some are in airplanes, and those airplanes are about to become the safest place on Earth. But most are on the ground, and the ground has betrayed them. The first minute is when the sounds begin, not the screams. The screams come later, when people have breath to scream. The first sound is a collective, worldwide gasp, the sound of 8 billion lungs being emptied by sudden weightlessness. Then the sound of impact, not downward impact, upward impact. The sound of bodies hitting ceilings, of heads striking plaster and concrete and wood, the sound of furniture slamming into roofs from below, of lamps and books and picture frames and television sets and kitchen appliances colliding with everything above them. From inside every building on Earth, a muffled drumming, a chaotic, percussive explosion of objects battering against ceilings and upper walls. If you are still holding the pipe, you hear it above you. Your own ceiling is being hammered by your own furniture, your desk, your chair, your bookshelf, your television, your refrigerator in the next room. A deep groan of metal dragging across the ceiling, scraping toward the window, and then the shattering crash of glass as it punches through and tumbles into the open sky. And then the screaming starts, distant at first, muffled, coming through walls and floors and windows, the screaming of neighbors, of families, of children, of people who did not grab anything, of people who are now rising through their homes, through their ceilings if the ceilings are weak, through shattered windows, into the growing cascade of debris that is filling the air above every city on Earth. Because it is not just people, it is everything, every loose object, every unsecured item, every particle of dust, every drop of water in every glass on every table. The air itself feels different, thicker, charged, as if the atmosphere is being stretched upward, pulled along with everything else. You cling to the pipe and you feel your arms burning. You feel your fingers slipping. You look at the floor beneath you, the floor that is now above you, and you realize something that chills your blood. The pipe you are holding is bolted to the wall, but the wall is bolted to the building, and the building, you realize, is starting to creak, starting to groan, starting to shift, because nothing on this planet was built to hang from its own foundations. Nothing was designed to support its own weight from the top. Every building on Earth is an upright structure, compressed downward by gravity into its own base. Flip that gravity, and every building becomes a structure hanging from its foundations by pure structural tension. And foundations were never meant to be used as anchors, not like this. Within the first hour, the cities begin to die, not slowly, not gracefully, violently, brutally, with a savagery that defies imagination. Picture a major city, any major city, New York, Tokyo, London, Mumbai. Picture the streets, the avenues, the bridges, tunnels, the parking garages, the outdoor cafes, the construction sites, the parks, the fountains. Every single thing on the surface of that city that is not welded, bolted, anchored, or fused to something else is now in the sky. Cars, thousands of cars, tens of thousands of cars, lifted from parking lots, from driveways, from highway lanes, from drive-thrus, from garages. They tumble upward in a grotesque ballet of metal and glass, rising at first slowly, then faster, then terrifyingly fast, spinning and colliding and shedding parts as they climb. Loose dirt, gravel, sand, the topsoil of every park and garden and median strip, ripped from the ground like a tablecloth pulled from a table, rising in great dark clouds of earth that blot out the sun. Trash, papers, plastic bags, shopping carts, bicycles, street signs that were not buried deep enough, fire hydrants torn from their bolts, manhole covers launched into the stratosphere like coins from a spring-loaded launcher, and then the water. This is the part that breaks your mind. Every lake, every pond, every river, every reservoir, every ocean on the planet. The surface water, the loose water, the water that is not deeply embedded in the ground, begins to rise, not in trickles, in walls, in sheets, in vast, impossible curtains of water that peel off the surface of every body of water on Earth and climb into the sky. Lakes drain upward, not downward, upward. You can see the bottom of a lake for the first time in history, not because it dried up, but because the water left. It went up. The oceans are worse. The oceans are unimaginable. The top layer of every ocean, every sea, every gulf, every bay, billions of tons of water, lifting away from the planet's surface and ascending into the atmosphere in a rising column of churning, frothing, screaming liquid. The spray alone could fill the sky from horizon to horizon. The mist could blanket entire continents. And within that rising water, within that ascending flood, everything that was floating, boats, ships, cargo containers, buoys, seaweed, fish, marine life of every size, from plankton to whales, dragged upward in a column of salt water that climbs and climbs and climbs. The sky turns dark, not from clouds, from water, from earth, from debris, from the pulverized remnants of human civilization ascending into the upper atmosphere in a pillar of dust and metal and liquid that would be visible from the moon, if anyone were on the moon. And in the middle of it all, you are still holding the pipe, still alive, still breathing, but barely, because the building you are in is now groaning louder than before, and you can hear through the chaos, through the screaming wind and the battering debris, the sound of concrete beginning to crack. It happens at the 43-minute mark, give or take. You do not have a watch anymore. Time has lost its meaning. But roughly 43 minutes into the reversal, the building you are in surrenders. It does not collapse downward. It collapses upward. The foundation, which has been holding the entire weight of the structure in tension for nearly an hour, finally fails. A bolt shears. A weld fractures. A column splits along a hairline crack that has been widening since the first second. And then, with a sound like a gunshot multiplied by 1,000, the building rips free from the earth. You feel it before you hear it. A lurch, a jolt. The pipe in your hand moves, not because your grip is failing, because the pipe itself is moving, because the wall it is attached to is moving, because the entire building is now airborne. Your stomach drops, or rises. You cannot tell anymore. The floor that was above you is now further above you. The room you are in is disintegrating around you. Walls separating, ceilings detaching. The pipe you were clinging to is now part of a flying mass of concrete and rebar and glass that is accelerating into the sky at 9.8 meters per second squared. You have two choices. You can hold on and ride the building into the upper atmosphere, where the air will thin and the cold will kill you and the debris will crush you, and the ascent will never end. Or you can let go. You let go. You push off the pipe with everything you have, not upward, not downward, but sideways, toward the building next door, toward anything, toward a world that is now a vertical battlefield. You fly through the air, not gracefully, not like a superhero, like a rag doll thrown by a child, tumbling and spinning, the world a blur of sky and ground and debris and water and dust. You see another building, lower than the one you left, still attached to its foundation for now. You see a window, an open window. You twist your body. You reach. Your fingers find the sill. Your shoulder screams as your arm takes the full weight of your body, jerking you to a violent stop. But you are holding on. You are holding on to another building. You are alive, for now. You pull yourself through the window and onto a ceiling, because the ceiling is now the floor, and you collapse onto it, gasping, trembling, bleeding from a dozen small cuts where debris grazed you. You have survived the first hour. You have roughly 23 hours left, and the worst is yet to come. You are lying on a ceiling, the ceiling of someone's living room. Their couch is somewhere above you now, or below you, or in the sky. Their television is gone. Their coffee table punched through a window 3 minutes ago. The room is nearly empty. Everything that was not bolted down has left. What remains is the skeleton of a home, the fixed structure, the walls, the ceiling, which is now your floor, the actual floor, which is now your ceiling, a flat surface about 3 meters above your head, covered in the remnants of what used to be on the ceiling, light fixtures, ceiling fans, dust, a spider web, hanging downward or upward, its occupant long gone. You stand up carefully, slowly, because the ceiling was not designed to be walked on. It is drywall. It is plaster. It is not load-bearing in this direction. Every step you take could send you crashing through it into the room above, which is also a ceiling now, and then through that ceiling, and the next, climbing through the building not by stairs, but by gravity, falling upward through floor after floor until you reach the roof and then the sky. So you crawl, you distribute your weight, you move like a soldier under wire, flat, slow, deliberate, pressing your palms and knees against the ceiling floor, testing each section before committing your weight. The ceiling groans beneath you, flexes, but holds. You find a doorway. Doorways are structural. Doorways have frames, thick wood or metal, designed to carry load. You pull yourself toward the frame and press your back against it. For a moment, just a moment, you rest. Then you keep moving. You need to find shelter, real shelter, not a ceiling in a residential apartment, not drywall and plaster and thin wood. You need concrete. You need a basement. Except basements are now the highest point of the building. You need a room that is enclosed on all sides, a room with no windows, a room with thick walls, a room that was built to withstand pressure from every direction, a bunker, a vault, a stairwell core, an elevator shaft, parking garage sublevel if you can reach it, which now means climbing up through the building toward what used to be down. You move through the apartment, crawling from room to room, testing ceilings, avoiding the gaping holes where floors have already failed and people have already fallen upward through them. Through one hole, you can see the sky, filled with debris, filled with water, filled with the wreckage of a city that is no longer a city. You look away. You cannot afford to look. You need to focus. You need to find concrete. While you crawl, the planet is undergoing a transformation that will be studied by whatever survives for millennia, if anything survives. The atmosphere is being dragged upward. Not all of it. The atmosphere is gas, and gas is subject to the same forces as everything else. The reversed gravity pulls the atmosphere away from the surface, thinning the air at ground level, concentrating it in a rising shell above the planet. The effect is immediate and devastating. At the surface, the air pressure drops, not to vacuum, not instantly, but measurably, perceptibly. Your ears pop. Then they pop again. Then they ache. The pressure differential is like ascending a mountain in seconds, except you are not ascending. The air is leaving you. Breathing becomes harder. Not impossible. Not yet. But each breath feels thinner. Each inhale feels insufficient. The sky, meanwhile, is thickening. The upper atmosphere, compressed and concentrated by the upward pull of reversed gravity, becomes denser than it has ever been. Sound travels differently through it. Light bends through it. The horizon shimmers and warps. The sun, already dimmed by the ascending clouds of dust and water, becomes a ghost, a pale orange smear in a sky that is no longer blue, but a dark, muddy brown, streaked with veins of white where water vapor has condensed into impossible high-altitude rivers. The temperature drops. At the surface, the loss of atmospheric pressure means the loss of thermal insulation. The air that remains is thin and cold. You shiver, not from fear alone, from cold, real cold, the kind of cold that settles into your bones. And above you, in the thickened upper atmosphere, the rising water begins to freeze. Billions of tons of water, lifted from oceans and lakes and rivers, now ascending into the stratosphere and beyond, flash freezing into crystals, into hail, into ice. Vast suspended glaciers form in the sky, held aloft by reversed gravity, drifting and tumbling and colliding in slow motion, shedding ice that falls upward, that climbs upward, that joins the growing mass of frozen water suspended above the planet, like a second, artificial sky. If you could see it, it would be the most beautiful and the most terrifying thing you have ever seen. A ceiling of ice, miles above the surface, lit from behind by a sun you can barely feel, but you cannot see it. You are inside a building, crawling on a ceiling, looking for concrete, and the concrete is getting closer. You find it on the 7th floor, or what used to be the 7th floor, the utility core of the building, the vertical spine that holds everything together, concrete walls, concrete floor, concrete ceiling, two of which are now ceiling and floor in the opposite configuration, but both of which are concrete. The room is small, maybe 3 meters by 4. It houses electrical panels, conduit, a junction box, thick bundles of cable that run from the basement to the roof. There are no windows. There is one door, a heavy steel fire door, and it is closed. You push through it and pull it shut behind you. The latch clicks, and for the first time in hours, the sound of chaos dims, not silence. The building still groans. The wind still howls through gaps in the structure. Distant crashes still reach you, muffled and distorted. But inside this concrete box, the world is smaller, contained, manageable. You sit on the ceiling, which is now your floor, and you press your back against the concrete wall and you breathe. Your breath fogs in the cold air. Your hands are shaking. Your arms are bleeding from a dozen shallow cuts. Your left shoulder is pulsing with a deep ache from the impact of catching the windowsill. But you are alive. You are in a concrete room with no windows and a steel door. You are as safe as anyone can be in a world where gravity has reversed. You take stock. You have no water. You have no food. You have no phone. You have no way of knowing what time it is. But you know instinctively that time is running. You know that the reversal, whatever caused it, might not be permanent. And you know, with a dread that settles in your chest like a stone, that if gravity returns to normal, everything that went up must come down. You look at the ceiling above you, the actual ceiling, 3 meters up, which used to be the floor. It is solid concrete. Good. If things start falling, this ceiling will protect you. For a while. You look at the walls, solid concrete. Good. If the building shifts, these walls will hold. For a while. You look at the door, steel but not bolted, not locked. If something hits it from the other side with enough force, it will give. You wedge a piece of conduit against the door. It is not much. It is everything you have. You sit. You wait. You listen to the building breathe around you, a living thing in agony. And you count the seconds in your head, because seconds are all you have, and every second brings you closer to the moment when the world flips back. The hours that follow are the longest of your life. You sit in the concrete room and you listen. The sounds of the city dying reach you in fragments, a distant crash, deep and heavy, as another building tears free from its foundation and rises, a sustained groaning, metallic and agonized, as a bridge somewhere rips from its pilings and ascends in pieces, a roar, low and continuous, that you eventually identify as water, not rain, not a river, the sound of an ocean rising. You have never heard anything like it, a sustained, unbroken wall of sound, like a waterfall that never ends, because the waterfall is the entire surface of the sea lifting away from the planet. It goes on for hours. It becomes background. It becomes the new normal. And beneath it, other sounds, individual cries, sharp and distant, people, somewhere out there, still alive, still falling, still rising. You cannot help them. You cannot even identify which direction the sounds come from, because direction has lost its meaning. Everything is up now. Everything is sky. You think about the people in airplanes, the lucky ones, a commercial airliner at cruising altitude, 30,000 feet up, when gravity reverses. The plane is already in the air. Its engines are already running. The reversal does not rip it upward, because it is already supported by lift and thrust. The passengers feel a lurch, a strange inversion of weight, but the plane holds. The pilot, if they are quick, if they are brilliant, levels the aircraft and circles, because there is nowhere to land. Every runway on Earth is either ascending into the sky or buried under debris or simply gone. The airports are graveyards of rising metal. The planes circle and circle and circle, burning fuel they cannot replace, hovering over a world they cannot return to, waiting for the 24 hours to end. You think about the people underground, miners, subway passengers, tunnel workers, people who were below the surface when gravity reversed. For them, the reversal is different. The ground above them is now pressing down on them from below, or rather, they are pressing up against the ground above them. But the ground is heavy. The ground is massive. The earth itself, the rock and soil and stone, does not rise the way a car rises. It is too heavy, too deep, too connected to the planetary crust. So the underground spaces, the tunnels and mines and bunkers, become traps. Ceilings become floors. People fall upward onto the tunnel roofs. If the tunnel holds, they survive, bruised and disoriented. If the tunnel fails, they are buried, not under rubble, above rubble, crushed by the earth that was once above them and is now, impossibly, beneath their feet. You think about all of this as you sit in your concrete room. You think about the sheer scale of the catastrophe. 8 billion people, hundreds of millions of buildings, every vehicle, every ship, every structure not anchored to bedrock, all of it in the sky. And you think about the return. You think about it constantly. You cannot stop thinking about it. Because when gravity returns to normal, every single thing that went up will come down. And it will not come down gently. It will come down at 9.8 meters per second squared, accelerating, from miles up, from the upper atmosphere, from the frozen ceiling of ice and water and debris that has formed above the planet. Everything will fall. Everything will impact. and the surface of the Earth will be bombarded by the entirety of human civilization, plus billions of tons of water and ice dropping from the sky. You feel it before it happens, a change in the air, a shift in the groaning of the building, a subtle alteration in the pressure against your eardrums. Something is different. Something is changing. You do not know how long it has been. 12 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours. You have lost count. Your body is stiff. Your cuts have crusted. Your thirst is a living thing in your throat, a physical presence that makes every swallow painful. But something is different now. The building has stopped groaning, not because it has settled, because the force acting on it has changed. The tension in the structure, the upward pull that has been trying to tear it from the earth for hours, is weakening, fading, like a tide turning. You press your palms against the concrete floor ceiling beneath you. You feel it, a faint, almost imperceptible pressure, downward, not the absence of upward force, the beginning of downward force. Gravity is coming back. The realization hits you like ice water. You scramble to your feet. You look at the ceiling above you, the 3 meters of concrete that used to be the floor. If gravity returns fully, instantly, in a snap, then everything above you, everything that has been resting on that ceiling floor for 24 hours, will suddenly weigh what it weighs. Tons of concrete, tons of building, tons of structure that was never designed to carry load in this direction. The ceiling above you will become a floor again, and a floor that is supporting the weight of an entire building above it. A building that has been structurally compromised by hours of inverted tension. A building whose foundations have been stressed in ways they were never designed to endure. That floor could collapse. That floor could come down on top of you. You look around the room. Concrete walls, concrete floor. The ceiling is the danger. You need to get under something. A support beam, a doorway. You spot a structural column in the corner of the room, a vertical concrete pillar that runs from floor to ceiling, or rather from ceiling to floor, or rather through the entire structure. It is the strongest point in the room. You move to it. You press your back against it. You make yourself as small as possible. And then you hear it. A sound. Low, deep, building. Not from the building. From everywhere. From the sky. From the atmosphere. From the entire planet. The sound of gravity returning. The sound of everything that went up beginning to come down. It is a roar, a rumble, a vibration that you feel in your chest, in your teeth, in your bones. It is the sound of billions of tons of material, water, ice, earth, metal, concrete, glass, wood, flesh, beginning to accelerate downward from every altitude, from every height, from every corner of the sky. It is the sound of the sky falling, and it is getting louder. The return is not instant. That is the only mercy. Gravity does not snap back like a switch. It ramps. It builds. Over the course of minutes, the upward force weakens, passes through zero, and becomes a downward force that strengthens and strengthens and strengthens until it reaches full strength. This means that objects do not all fall at once. Objects at low altitudes, objects that only rose a few hundred meters, fall first. They begin to rain down before the highest debris even starts moving. You hear the first impacts before the worst of it arrives. Distant thuds, sharp cracks, the sound of small objects, loose bricks, scattered debris, personal items, papers, dust, beginning to strike the ground outside. Then heavier sounds, cars, street furniture, light poles, trees, things that rose a few hundred meters and are now returning at terminal velocity, striking the surface with the force of meteorites. The building shudders. You brace against the column.
The concrete around you groans. Above you, the ceiling floor cracks. A fissure. Thin. Hairline running across the surface. Dust falls from it, downward.
Look closer.
Into your face. The first dust you have felt fall downward in 24 hours. It feels like a benediction. It feels like a death sentence. Because the crack means the ceiling is failing. The ceiling is beginning to yield to the weight above it. And the weight above it is growing. Every minute, every second. As gravity strengthens, the building above you weighs more and more. And the compromised ceiling above you bears more and more of that weight. And the crack widens. And the dust falls thicker. And you hear above you the sound of concrete beginning to separate. Then the water arrives. The first wave of returning moisture hits the building like a hammer, not rain. Not in any sense you have ever experienced rain. A wall of water, condensed from the frozen upper atmosphere, melting and falling as the temperature and pressure normalize, descending in sheets and torrents and rivers that slam into the building with the flood. The steel door behind you shudders. The conduit you wedged against it slides. You hear water pouring through gaps in the structure, cascading through the building, finding every crack and channel and conduit and pipe, flooding downward, filling the spaces that gravity is reasserting as down. The concrete room is leaking. Water streams down the walls. It pools on the ceiling floor beneath you. It rises around your knees, cold. Freezing cold. The meltwater of a sky-wide glacier returning to the surface. And still the heavier debris has not arrived. You can hear it coming. A growing roar. A continuous building thunder. The sound of buildings, of structures, of massive objects descending from thousands of meters, from miles up, accelerating at full gravitational strength, reaching terminal velocities that defy comprehension. A building falling from 10,000 meters does not land gently. It impacts like a bomb, and hundreds of buildings are falling. Thousands. Every structure that was torn from its foundation is now returning, and they are all falling at once. The sky is falling. The sky is made of buildings and cars and water and ice and earth and everything that left the ground 24 hours ago, and it is all coming down. The building above you fails. There is no warning. No final groan, just a sound like a cannon shot, a sharp, deafening crack, and the ceiling above you splits into two pieces and begins to descend. You press yourself against the column. You make yourself as small as a human being can make themselves. You pray to whatever you pray to. The ceiling comes down. It does not reach you. The column holds. The two halves of the ceiling, split by the fissure, sag and tilt and fall, but the column interrupts them. One half catches on the column and slides sideways, crashing into the far wall. The other half tilts and drops, forming a ramp of broken concrete that leads from where the ceiling was to where the floor is. Dust and debris cascade down it. Water pours through the gap. But above you, above the column, a pocket of space remains, a triangle of survival, a cave of concrete and rebar and luck. You are in it. You are alive. Outside, the bombardment continues. The surface of the Earth is being struck by the returning mass of human civilization and planetary water. Every impact registers as a shudder in the ground, a vibration in the column, a rain of dust from the broken concrete above you. The sounds are indescribable. Booms, crashes, explosions of shattered glass and twisted metal, the wet, heavy slam of water and ice striking ground, the grinding, tearing shriek of structures colliding on the surface, stacking and tangling and crushing each other into unrecognizable wreckage. It goes on and on and on, for what feels like hours, for what might be hours. The debris does not all fall at once. The material at the highest altitudes, the frozen water and ice and dust that reached the upper stratosphere, takes the longest to descend. It falls for minutes, for tens of minutes. A sustained planetary rain of ice and water and earth and metal that transforms the surface into an impact zone. Every city that lost its buildings is now being hit by those buildings. Every lake that drained is now being refilled, not gently, but by the violent return of its own water, slamming into the empty basin and exploding outward in a shockwave of spray and foam. The oceans return. The top layer of the sea, which ascended into the atmosphere and froze and drifted and accumulated, now descends as a global hailstorm of unimaginable scale. Saltwater ice, falling in blocks the size of cars, striking the surface and shattering and melting and flooding. The planet is being rebuilt by gravity, violently, brutally, with a cruelty that does not distinguish between the living and the dead. You huddle in your concrete cave and you listen to the world end and begin again, simultaneously, and you hold on to the column and you wait. It ends quietly. That is the strangest part. After the roar, after the bombardment, after the thunder and the crashing and the screaming of a planet readjusting to its own rules, it ends in silence. Not true silence. There is dripping. There is the settling of rubble. There is the distant muffled sound of water finding its level, filling basins and low places, reasserting the geography of oceans and lakes and rivers. But the bombardment stops. The falling stops. The sky, which for 24 hours was a ceiling of debris and ice and water and the wreckage of civilization, is clear again, or clearing. You do not know. You cannot see the sky. You are buried. You are in a pocket of concrete and rebar, beneath tons of collapsed building, beneath the debris of a city that fell from the sky. And you are alive. You wait. You wait because you do not know if gravity is stable. You wait because you do not know if the reversal will happen again. You wait because moving could destabilize the rubble around you, could collapse the pocket, could end the survival you fought so hard to achieve. You wait until the thirst becomes unbearable. Then you move, slowly, carefully. You push at the rubble above you. You find gaps. You find channels. You crawl upward through the wreckage of a collapsed building, through broken concrete and twisted rebar and shattered glass and waterlogged debris, climbing toward the surface. It takes hours. You do not know how many. You emerge into daylight, gray, hazy, filtered through a sky still thick with moisture and dust. But daylight. You stand on the surface of the earth. The ground is beneath your feet. Gravity holds you downward, the way it always has, the way it always should. You look around. The world is unrecognizable. The city you knew is gone. Not destroyed in the way you see in movies. Not a recognizable skeleton of familiar structures. Erased. Replaced. The surface is a landscape of rubble and water and mud and debris, piled in drifts like snow, scoured and reshaped by the bombardment. Buildings that survived the reversal did not survive the return. Structures that held for 24 hours of inverted tension collapsed under the weight of their own returning mass. The only structures still standing are the ones built into bedrock, the bunkers, the deep foundations, the subterranean vaults, the underground. The underground survived. You are alive because you found concrete, because you found a column, because you wedged a piece of conduit against a door, because you were lucky. You stand in the wreckage and you breathe. The air is thick and wet and cold, and it tastes like salt and dust and metal, and it is the best air you have ever breathed. The sun breaks through the haze, a single beam, warm, downward, the way it always has been, the way it always should be, and you are still here. The world broke, the world fell, the world returned, and you are still here. 24 hours of reversed gravity, the most terrifying day in human history, and you survived it, not because you were strong, not because you were smart, because you grabbed a pipe, because you held on, because you found concrete, because you waited, because the column held. Sometimes that is all survival is. Grabbing the nearest solid thing, holding on, finding shelter, waiting for the sky to stop falling, and then, when the silence comes, crawling toward the light. You are alive. The world is broken, but you are alive, and tomorrow, you will start to rebuild. Tomorrow, when the sun rises and gravity holds you to the ground, and up is up and down is down, and the floor is beneath your feet. Tomorrow, if the floor is still there,